Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion, and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine the show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of Smith Weekly, including Todd A. and Brent S. On the show today is Janet Lee Sheriff, CEO of Golden Predator Mining, a gold-focused developer and explorer that has multiple assets, including the core Brewery Creek mine, the Three Aces project, as well as other assets. The company is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol GPY, and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol NTGSF. Janet, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It's good to have you on. Well, first off, Janet, your thoughts on where we are in the gold market and also your views on gold price and sentiment.
Well, I'm not the technical expert on the market, but my personal opinion is gold's going to keep going higher. It's probably going to have a little bit of a rough bounce right now. The global factors are pretty uncertain, but obviously if we have a gold company, we're long gold and feel that there's a lot of strength still to come through this year and into the future.
Can you speak to your background, past experience, and what keeps you interested in this sector?
Well, what drew me into the mining sector was actually not from a technical end. It was more from the social and economic end. My background, I studied economics at Queen's University in Canada. I went north to actually pay off my student loan and ended up staying for 25 years and realized when I was up north in the Yukon that the best way to create wealth in rural communities was mining, that it created transferable skills, high-paying jobs, wealth in the community, contract opportunities, business development, taxation for local as well as federal governments. And I was fascinated by it. I started working with the governments and the First Nation governments and came into the mining sector actually trying to bridge relationships, develop benefits agreements between the first company was Sherwood Copper and the Selkirk First Nation. So that drew me in. I always put community first. It's, I think, a way that it de-risks projects for shareholders. It has to work for shareholders at all times, but if you are not a good corporate citizen and bring community along with you, you will have risks to the project either immediately or down the road. And I use those relationships and use the word use in a good way to further projects and benefit communities. And I think that's the best way I can help de-risk a project. I manage the corporate end of the company, and I've been in this position about 5 years. Done a lot to rebuild the focus of the company, and have a very strong technical team that we are expanding as we are advancing the Brewery Creek project back towards production.
Well, very well, and I appreciate you sharing that information. What challenges do you see in this business, Janet? What things would you like to see different in the natural resource business, and how are you bringing that forward with your work that you're doing?
I think that the mining sector at times is a bit stuck in the past, and it's hard to change. And the world is changing so much, and especially in the past few years with the climate change discussion, whether you believe it or not, environmental factors, the ESG principles that are now front and center with a lot of funds. And a lot of money has left the sector. It's a bit old school, I would say. And I think that the mining sector needs to change, and the principles that are behind environmental, social, and good governance really are a rename of corporate responsibility, sustainability. But in order to get new money into the sector, because the money that's there are believers in gold, but if you want the millennials' attention and you want the funds that are generalists or not in the space right now, there has to be a way to prove your company and the sector really are being good corporate citizens. And we are. I think people are trying as hard as they can, and the ones that are going to succeed are fulfilling on those efforts. But we need to do a better job of showing how we're being good corporate citizens. And that's something that's been a mandate of mine from before I was the CEO. I was the Vice President of Communications and First Nation Relations. And I had a very strong board, and I still do, that believed in my vision immensely, coupled with a strong technical program that wanted to create value for shareholders. But they allowed me to do some very innovative programs that reached into the community and brought out that good corporate citizen. And I think it's one of the best strengths of Golden Predator, when obviously our assets as well. But with coupled, I think that's what you're going to see in a very good company going forward.
Well, certainly some good points, and you guys are doing a lot of work with local community, and I want to chat a little bit more about that in a little while. Let's move into Golden Predator. Now, this company was around going back to the last cycle as Golden Predator, then America's Bullion, and then the two core projects came back under the Golden Predator brand around 2015, if I have my information correct. Take us over that history, and what were the challenges over that time, and how have things improved since the early days, Janet?
The company originally was focused on Brewery Creek and had some challenges getting through the permitting process. And when that happened, we had cash in the bank and had to survive what was a very challenging time in the market around 2012. So we regrouped as America's Bullion. We merged with another company called Till Capital, and eventually parted ways with Till, reassembled Brewery Creek, and picked up through a merger 3 Aces, and started rebuilding the company. And that's when I came in, just as those projects were being put back together under Golden Predator. We still had the permitting challenges with Brewery Creek that were yet to be resolved, and the cost of getting through the permitting challenges as being presented to us were formidable. So we decided that we would focus on 3 Aces, and it was a high grade and is a high grade orogenic system. And we chose to restart the company by conducting a at surface bulk sample with very, very high grade gold that was visible and free milling. And so we started the company with that project. And so we worked with 3 Aces. We were one of the fortunate companies that could raise money in about 2016, 2017. And we raised a substantial amount of money based on the fact that we bulk sampled 3 Aces to restart it. And our theory was that if we have 30 gram per ton material sitting at surface that's free milling, and we can't find a way to prove that it's mineable, and use our own money to move it, why would anybody invest in us? And so we did. We built a very primitive plant, which we've since upgraded substantially. And we did a small bulk sample, processed the gold, and took it to Rob McEwen and put 10 ounces of gold on his desk. And he was one of the lead investors, and believed that if we could do that, then we were worth investing in. From there, we spent a long time on 3 Aces. 3 Aces is a very big project. It's going to be a big boy project one day, we hope. And we made a lot of geological interpretations and figured out what's going on. But in the background, the Brewery Creek issue was not going away. And I spent about a year in the data room going through everything because I was certain that our licenses were current and the project was a temporary closure, which would allow us to restart under existing licenses. But there was a misinterpretation within the government. I eventually found the critical document that proved the project was in temporary closure and presented that to the chief of the Trondheim. And she agreed with me. They did their own due diligence. They have a very strong technical team. And she agreed that we were licensed. And the two of us went to the premier. Brewery Creek is in the premier's riding. And we presented our case. And the government did a legal interpretation and realized we were correct. And we are permitted for production under the existing licenses. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot of work to do to modernize many of the management plans, which is underway. But that was in July, and it was a huge turning point for the company because now we have a project with a resource, a licensed area, licenses to restart immediately. Not that we are, there's work to do, but it was, and at that point we had to make a decision. Either we're going to focus on 3 aces and continue drilling, or we're going to put all of our resources on a very timely restart of a gold mine that's proven environmentally and economically. So we decided the best value for our shareholders was to focus on Brewery Creek. And not to say that 3 aces isn't a great project and that it won't have attention, but we had to take all of our energy and very quickly work through the season at Brewery Creek, and we did. We feel that the small capex to get Brewery Creek back for processing gold, we could spend that to make money, or we could spend it on drilling and then have to finance again. So that was the critical decision, and some of our shareholders were frustrated, I would say, because they had invested because of 3 aces. But our larger shareholders, we discussed this with all of them, and if you don't have a path to production or a path to revenue or revenue in this current market because of the money that's left, you are in a very weak position. So having this short-term timeline for Brewery Creek to be back into production puts Golden Predator into a very small and elite group that has that ability to produce revenue and ride out what we see are difficult times raising money for exploration.
Appreciate the overview and certainly a lot of history, and with the current gold prices, I can see why the focus has swapped back over. Can you tell us a little bit now about the capital structure of the company, how it looks today, as far as shares out, key shareholders at this point, and also the cash and debt situation?
We have just over 156 million shares issued and outstanding. We have about 7 million in options, fully diluted 170 million. A number of our warrants are far out of the money and expiring this month, so the fully diluted will drop. Largest shareholders, my husband, Bill Sheriff, who's chair of the board for full disclosure, and myself are, along with Eric Sprott personally, the largest shareholders, about 11% each, or 10, maybe with Eric. Pat DeCapo with Power One, McEwen Mining, not Rob, but actually in McEwen. CIBC Private Wealth out of Yorkville and Toronto owns about 24%. It's a series of high net worth investors, so you won't see them all grouped as one investor. And Albert Friedberg with Friedberg Mercantile is a large shareholder as well. There's no debt in the company, and cash, I think we have about $1.5 million in the bank. Our goal is that we're seeking to complete the study on the phase 1 restart and finance early in the first half of this year We're seeking an all-debt financing, preferably, as the capex is below our market cap, which is about 56 million Canadian. We've got about a dozen confidentiality agreements signed to look at the information confidentially before the completion of the feasibility study on the restart of the heap leach pad.
And Janet, where would the major shareholders, or maybe you could just speak to management as far as where they own shares? Is it much higher prices or around current levels?
Yeah, Eric Sprott came in about 70 cents, and then again at about 40 cents. Pat DeCapo, Power One's been in every financing, so they've run from 16 cents up to $1, I believe, maybe a bit more. McEwen came in early. CIBC's all bought in the market at all prices, and Albert Friedberg in and out consistently from 2016 to probably 2019.
And talk about the key management members there you've got on board with the company. Can you highlight a few key people that you've got there working for you?
Yeah, so obviously I've given enough information about myself. Bill Sheriff is our executive chairman, and Bill is a geologist by background, but he's quite involved in our financings and assists in raising money for us. He oversees the technical program to date and studied at El Paso. His background in the markets, I think it was 2004, he started a uranium company called Energy Metals, and in 30 months took it from $1 million market cap to selling to Uranium One for $1.6 billion. He's known as a very strong skill set in identifying and securing good projects, and that comes from his time in Nevada with gold and with the uranium company. And he secured Brewery Creek for us at Golden Predator with the objective that no project in the Yukon would be acquired by Golden Predator if it didn't have a road. We want to build a mine and not simply explore. We've changed the team a lot in the past year. We have a gentleman named Robin Fraser who oversees our processing plant. He really is a master at processing and materials management. And I know we're going to talk further about that, but he and a gentleman named Colin Kraft, who's run mills at gold mines and tungsten mines, very fortunate to have both of them overseeing the plant in Watson Lake. We just announced a new COO, Mike Myslowski, who's actually our old COO. He, in the interim, was working for Teck and closed a mine for Teck in Idaho and came back. It was very important for us if we want to see a timely and very fast, moving as fast as we can, restart of Brewery Creek, was to bring back people that had an abundance of skill and history with the project. So Mike will now overtake Bill on the technical program, and Mike's an operator. He's run mines for Coeur and Teck around the world. He has a very high focus on safety and a very strong safety and production record. We have brought in another gentleman by the name of Jim Hesketh, and people may recognize that name from other companies. Jim has run a barite mine in the Yukon. He has run mines in Montana, Nevada, and California. He was the banker for Rothschild when they retired the debt on Brewery Creek. So when it was under Viceroy, when gold hit 300, they closed in 2002. And he has a very strong knowledge of the entire project because of that. But Jim's an engineer, and the most valuable thing that he brings to our team is he has actually restarted a heap leach mine. And he restarted it in California, where there's a very, very stringent and onerous regulatory regime. It was called the Briggs Mine, and he ran it successfully. He is bringing that skill set of how to efficiently and effectively and an environmentally sound way to bring a heap leach mine back into production. And he is driving the really the restart of it, which then Mike will take over. So they're working very closely together. And with Jim, we brought in Kappas Cassidy out of Reno, Nevada, and they are one of the world's leading experts in heap leach mining. And they are doing the feasibility study on the restart of the heap leach pad. And they coincidentally built the original ADR plant at Brewery Creek. So again, they have a very strong knowledge. And with 20 years of history and 20 years of data collection and 20 years of water monitoring, we have a very good understanding of the project and have brought in a gentleman named Joe Harrington with Mine Water. Joe remediates old mining properties in the U.S., does a lot of work with super funds, and has a very strong record. He remediated and reclaimed temporarily Brewery Creek and detoxified the heap in under 8 months, which was never envisioned. So he has a complete knowledge of how it was reclaimed and allows us to answer a lot of questions that can move this along at a much more efficient and timely pace.
So at Brewery Creek, what is the plan for 2020? What goals are you guys looking to accomplish? And then the economic study stage at this point is the feasibility study. And what do you see as the time frame to get processing under phase one?
So with Brewery Creek, we've been left with a significant amount of infrastructure in place. We've never attached a concrete value to it, but we estimate it to be about $50 million worth of infrastructure. The ponds are there, partially lined, have to be relined. Buildings, some of the buildings are still there. The heap is only 7 cells were used, 10 were licensed. So there's 3 cells that can be built. There's mine roads. Some of them have to be upgraded. The pits are there, but the access road, there's so much there that we can start with. But our thought in advancing Brewery Creek is, how can we start with a reasonable CapEx? We see too much boom and bust in this sector. And we see too much boom and bust because small companies acquire too much debt. So if you're a $50 million market cap and you get $120 million of debt and restart the mine, which is, we could spend that in Canadian money, you will have a downturn in the market. They always come, and difficult times come, and if you can't service your debt, you are in a very bad position. We have the ability at Brewery Creek to restart in a phased process. And this comes from Jim Heska's experience in California at the Briggs mine. We first reprocess the heap. So phase one is there's 10.5 million tons of ore or material. Have to be careful of regulators and 43101. I can't overstate the do your own due diligence and rely on the study when it comes out. But Kappas Cassidy is looking at what we believe is 10.5 million tons from historic records on the heap, and historic records show that there's about 250,000 ounces on the heap. It was run of mine by Viceroy and was based on metallurgical reports that did not pan out, and they should have crushed. But by the time they figured out they should have crushed, gold was dipping down below 300, and there you are in that position where you're not getting the recovery you anticipated, and you have debt. So for a reasonable CapEx below our market cap, we believe we can do a phased approach by reprocessing the heap. So basically pick up the material, run it through a crusher, put it back. This also allows us to buy space on the heap because we can take out any waste or delirious materials and end up with more room as we eventually expand the 3 cells that are unbuilt but licensed. This we anticipate will take us 24 to 36 months to reprocess. And in that, and this will come out in the feasibility study, so it's just a projection at this time, we're looking at, based on our testing that we've done with SGS that we'd get about 50% recovery. So that 125,000 ounces helps repay our debt and allows us through this first phase to put in all the infrastructure and have it paid for. So we can move into the second phase, which is mining new material from the licensed area along the reserve trend. If you're not familiar with Brewery Creek, there's 3 trend structures. All of the pits right now are on the reserve trend, and that's all the licensed area. And there is room on the pad and in the mine plan and license to put the new material on the heap. We won't start that until we have a certain volume reprocessed. So our goal in 2020, and this is subject to the outcome of the feasibility study, a decision by the board to move towards production and financing, would be to start removing material from the existing cells, reline the ponds, and put in the generators, and start to get ready. So in the following year, when we put the ADR plant in, we can start to reprocess and run the solution over the heap. We had originally thought we could do it all in 1 year. It's risky because the Yukon winters creep up on you, and looking at moving into a winter is probably the riskiest position. So this way it allows us to look at a start in the spring, May-June timeline of 2021.
So the feasibility study, when do you anticipate that will be out for the market? And then also, if things, hypothetically, if things are a go, do you guys see that the financing would be obtained this year and you guys would get some work started on the ground this year?
Yes. Yeah. The feasibility study is underway. As mentioned, Kappas Cassidy is conducting it. End of March was the date on the contract. So we would anticipate that it would come out, if lucky, by or before that date, but April would be a reasonable worst case. We have all of the people under CA in the data room now, so they can look at the feasibility study before it comes out, and we can have the discussions about financing. And it would be our preference and our wish that we would finance shortly after the feasibility study comes out and be able to do a significant amount of the groundwork in 2020.
Can you give us a rough figure? And I know you got the study going, so maybe you can't, but of where you guys would see that your all-in costs are going to be at for the reprocessing under phase 1. And you mentioned earlier around 24 to 36 months to do the reprocessing. And then also, can you speak to the all-in costs at this point? Or maybe I can rephrase the question and just ask you, are you very comfortable at current gold prices?
I'd say we're comfortable at current gold prices. We just did announced a new, with an updated technical report, the 43101 report. And that was taking the existing report from 2014 and looking at a different cutoff grade and gold price. It increased our resource indicated and inferred to over 1 million ounces. I think it was about 1.2. That was a significant change that was due primarily to the price of gold, but also because the gold price is higher, you're able to have a lower cutoff grade. We are in the process now of doing a updated technical report that will include about 200 holes that weren't in that report because the program ended in the fall, so the holes weren't available for that report. So we're fairly confident that the report will show some additional resources. And we did a PEA in the past when the new technical report came out, updated, and the PEA now is a historic document. So I can't refer to it.
Okay. And do you see the production profile once you guys get going under phase 1? Do you see that will support the future phase 2 expansion and sustain company costs? Or do you see that there will certainly be a need for continued financing during these phase progress and expansions?
It's our preference not to finance beyond phase one. So loosely, and always dependent on the outcome of the feasibility study, it's looking as a good estimate about 35 million US to restart by reprocessing. We move 10,000 tons a day. That when there's a certain amount of material, you don't want to mix old and new material. The way Brewery Creek was designed, this was the most northerly heap leach mine in the world when it was built, the first built in the subarctic in the world. And because of that, it was built to Rolls-Royce standards. Triple lined heap, each cell is separated from the other. This makes it perfect for reprocessing because as soon as you reprocess and place in cell one, cell two won't touch it. So once we get to a certain volume, we can add the new material. But 24 to 36 months to reprocess. During that time, it's possible to look at adding in from phase two. But we, with that capital, we would put all of the necessary infrastructure into place. So it's there once we start phase two and it's paid for. And that's our goal, is that we don't have to go and raise another $50 million. And it takes the IRR in phase one and makes it less attractive. But in phase two, your rate of return becomes very attractive.
Now let's talk a little bit about Three Aces. Why you guys are working on the main focus is on Brewery Creek. Will anything be going on over at Three Aces? Can we expect some more bulk sampling? What would be the plan there simultaneous to Brewery Creek?
So Three Aces, we had planned a program last year, but when we had our licenses validated, because we're a small team, just put all of our focus on Brewery Creek. We ended up drilling 177 holes. The results are now starting to come through the labs and out. And we tested all the infrastructure, all the plumbing. We did stability tests on the foundations for the lab and the plant, and a lot of environmental baseline work. But unfortunately, it meant that we couldn't do anything at Three Aces. We actually also established a camp at Brewery Creek. Originally, there was 25. Now we've added another 50. We're hoping maximum capacity at that size because it's so close to Dawson. People can live at home and work at the mine. So that left us in a spot where we couldn't even do the planned bulk sample program at Three Aces. That said, we have had the plant going and have been processing the material. We would like this year to do some mapping work up at Three Aces and a small bulk sample on a different vein. The plant that's been operating has given us so much technical knowledge on geology and metallurgy. It's been a huge benefit. That's seen bulk sample in the Yukon has been an underutilized tool because you have to ship it so far away. So establishing our own plant has really given us knowledge that you should have in advance. You should know what the metallurgy is and how well it processes, and how the rock blasts, and are you getting the drill reconciliation that you think you're getting. So we'll do another one more this summer. We'll keep the plant going, and I can talk a bit about the plant if you want.
Yes, can you speak to the plant? Where is it in relation to Three Aces? And are you guys only processing the bulk samples coming out of Three Aces?
Yes, so the plant is located in the community of Watson Lake. It's along the Alaska Highway. It's about a 2.5-hour drive south of Three Aces. It is in a fenced, secured area that's on private land, and it is. I'm quite excited about some developments that came this year at the plant. We attached to the grid, so we're running off grid power now. It operates with a small staff. We originally built it so because we had such high grade gold, we knew if we shipped it somewhere else, we'd never really get a true representation of what we had. And we'd never acquire the knowledge and learn about it. So we did studies and determined that most of the gold was free milling. So if we built a water and gravity plant, we could recover a significant portion of the gold and also have a better understanding of our drill reconciliation. And so we did that at the first, and we ended up with two concentrates. concentrate number 1, which is pretty much pure gold with silver, we pour into a doré bar and send to the refinery. Concentrate number 2 ends up being a sulfide, and the gold in there is not attached to arsenopyrite. It's free milling, but it's so fine and so small that you can't separate it through gravity and water. So the first year we operated, we sent it to a smelter in Chicago. And when it came back, our gold-silver ratio was way off. And we always have a 10-to-1 gold-silver ratio at 3 aces. And there was missing gold. So we figured that for the cost of how much gold we lost, we probably could build our own little unit to replace sending it out to the smelter. So we spent about a year developing this prototype, which we call an SRU, Secondary Recovery Unit. And it's a mobile batch processing unit, and it operates without the use of cyanide. When we built it, we thought we would originally have to use cyanide, but we knew the CEO of EnviroLeach, and he was testing and focusing on electronic waste and recovering gold from electronic waste using a new cyanide-free solution. And we decided we would test it out, asked if we could send a sample to their lab in Surrey, BC, asked if we could send our metallurgist to watch. We're quite surprised that they were so open that we were allowed to watch, and the initial test worked better than cyanide, faster and 96% recovery. So we brought their team up to the site. We ran the unit, and same thing. We had the 96% recovery in 4 hours. So we're in the midst now of doing a 5-ton sample. We're about halfway through, and results will be coming out on that. This is getting us between the two concentrates over 85% recovery without the use of cyanide. And this test that we did on site, and now this 5-ton test, is the first on-site test in the world of this solution. And the way we present it to people is we built the washing machine and they bring the soap. And it works. And I don't know who was more surprised, me or Bill, but an exciting development. We see commercial applications and opportunities from this, and are very excited that the SRU is scalable. It is mobile, and we are receiving a number of inquiries from different First Nations companies and other jurisdictions about what we could do with this unit and our washing machine and the soap. None of this would have happened if we hadn't decided that we weren't going to ship our material away, that we were going to be innovative and different and do something in the Yukon nobody had done before. It comes with challenges. It comes with extra scrutiny and confusion with regulators, but we've worked with them very closely to establish operating guidelines and always maintaining the confidentiality of the solution and the design of the SRU. You don't see many pictures of it yet because we've been busy trademarking and looking at patenting, as has EnviroLeach. But the solution that's used is environmentally friendly, and there's nothing in it that isn't FDA approved. And we see stuff like this as, going back to our original discussion, one of those important things this sector has to do in order to attract new investment and new funds is trying at all times to find innovative, creative ways that you can be more sustainable, socially and environmentally responsible. We're very excited about what's happening there.
Well, certainly very interesting, and a couple questions coming out of what you mentioned. How can you guys scale this? Is it scalable to larger applications? And then my other question was back to Chicago. What happened to the gold?
What happened to the gold? We went to challenge the results. It's called an umpire process, and unfortunately, the gold was consumed. So we view it as a learning opportunity and something that led us to create our own solution. The SRU that we built is built on a 20-foot trailer you tow behind a truck. The intent is to put a mobile lab in the truck, tow the trailer, and you can actually take it to other site and operate it because there are no cyanide, no hazardous materials at all. So it is scalable, something that could be modular. It could work on, I don't want to say too much because we're exploring opportunities, but it is something that you can duplicate as well. But the cost to build it was under $150,000.
What types of mineralization can this work on, or is the jury still out on how many types it can work on?
I don't have the answer to that. We're only using it for gold, but it did recover silver as well, and we did not expect that, but there was a silver recovery. I should also mention, to be very clear, this is not being tested at Brewery Creek. So the two deposits are very different. Now, we're obviously still working on things to see where this goes, but at this point, the SRU is working on projects that would be similar to 3 Aces or Placer or something like that. When it comes to heap leach, the one factor that we're trying to control is the cost of the solution versus cyanide. And that's, I think, a factor that makes it the answer is uncertain on the scalability for large projects at this time.
Tell us about the Yukon Mint. Where are you processing the coinage? And then all of the products coming out of the Yukon Mint from your projects only. Can you tell us about the process in the mint?
So the Yukon Mint came out of the bulk sample plant in Watson Lake again. We saw the opportunity to have our own gold and started working with the First Nation and ran an art contest so we could put Indigenous art on the coins. It's another way that we saw a spin-off benefit to keep benefits local, to keep the community engaged, to expand the opportunities for mining to artists. And we're now into our third design, all three with Indigenous art on them. And we produce them at the Sunshine Mint in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Do a beautiful product, and we have taken them over to Switzerland, and they have given us high marks on the quality. It really came out of, we were quite surprised that the Yukon Mint had not been formed, so we've trademarked that. It's a subsidiary of Golden Predator. Our goal at this point is to focus on the community engagement as we expand our products and work on a multi-year business plan. But the Canadian Mint started because all the gold was leaving the Klondike during the gold rush in 1898, and the miners wanted to find a way to keep money local, as did the government. And so they started the Mint in order to capture the gold. I saw the Yukon Mint as doing the exact same thing. Why are we sending all the Yukon gold out? Why don't we do something locally with it? And, I hope one day to be able to mint ourselves, but there's a walk before you run approach right now. It's
Certainly.
Very exciting, and it's going over very well with the communities.
Do you guys see this as an asset that would stay with Golden Predator going forward? And then also, can you speak to where can people who are interested to looking at buying some of the products, where can they go to do that?
YukonMint.com is the website, and we keep it very reasonable because we want to put gold into people's hands. We have everything from 1/10 of an ounce to a full ounce. Now our focus has to be on getting Brewery Creek into production, and running other smaller operations gets distracting. So we do see the benefits of spinning it out one day. We'd like to do work for other people. We do get inquiries from other communities and companies, and at this point we just don't have the capacity, but I think it's an exciting enough opportunity to stand on its own one day. And as we move Brewery Creek along, we have to stay focused and make sure that is our success. It's our livelihood. So
Right.
that said, the mint started in Canada and evolved in similar ways, and now is a standalone. So we have to also acknowledge that we're not making a currency; we're making a coin at this point.
And speak to the importance of community relations around the company projects, and what are you doing specifically to keep the community supportive of what you're doing at Golden Predator?
Well, at Golden Predator, we wouldn't be where we are without the community behind us, and I wouldn't have my license looked at and recognized without having the strength of the Gwich'in with me. We just take a very different approach, and I guess it's not different for me. I was very, very fortunate 30 years ago that the elders liked me and saw somebody that respectfully tried to work with them, and they started teaching me. And I feel a responsibility to those teachers to take the skills that I was given and use them to bring together and find common ground between the mining companies and the First Nations and communities. And there is a lot of common ground. You can't be in mining and not care about the environment. And and you can't be in mining and not care about having a local labor force. But we're always seeking innovative solutions. And the best one I can give you is what we did at Three Mesas. An elder in the community named Mary Caesar suggested we have an elders in residence program. So we started one, and we had the elders living with us through the whole season. There was up to 4 elders every week living there. And it was tough on my team because they wanted to focus solely on drilling, but I explained that we had to get to know the Casca elders. It wasn't consultation. It wasn't anything other than getting to know each other. And we did that all season, and then they asked for a retreat, a summit, and we had 80 people at camp, elders, staff, and youth. And they got to know us, and we got to know them. And they offered so much more to our company than I ever imagined. Our staff retention was over 90%. We started to understand the social issues around residential school, which is a tough issue. But we became stronger, and they got to see everything we did, because you can't hide if you're living with us all season. Everything's open and accountable. And the award, the program went on to win an award. Mary Caesar won a national award in Canada for suggesting the program, and it's led to an ongoing engagement with the elders and then the community. And now we would like to work with the First Nations to incorporate traditional knowledge into the project. But anything like that, it's just all about respect and finding ways to work with people. And that program isn't at Brewery Creek. We do it in a different way. So it's just finding different ways that you work with the community and make sure you're just not leaving them behind. It's very easy to just drill and move on and say, when this is a mine, somebody will engage. But if you don't do it early and often, down the road there will be a risk to the project and the company and the shareholders. And so our commitment comes from the top, and we view it as one of the licenses we need in order to build a mine. And you need a water license, a mining license, and you need a social license. And that's where we focus on all 3.
Well, very interesting approach, and I think a lot of it makes sense for what you guys are doing there, and certainly has been a good approach over the last few years and keeping you guys supportive on the projects. Well, what does management see as end goals with the company, Janet? So looking out a few years, is the plan to get into production and build out, expand, and have an operating company there? Or is management of the opinion that at some point you guys are looking for a buyout? What is the exit strategy?
We don't see a buyout in our future. We see that the whole sector has changed. Where there used to be, the plan was that you start an exploration company, you build up a big resource, you get bought out by a big company, and move on. The number of big companies is going down. The number of buyouts is going down, and you're ending up with these large resources that you're too small to build. So ours was, let's have a manageable project that hopefully grows as we continue to explore. But by 2021, based on the study, year one, you could see a 30,000 ounce from the pad. Same thing in the second year, but projections for Brewery Creek were 4 million tons a year. That's about 75 to 100,000 ounces a year. And so back after reprocessing the heap and starting in those smaller numbers, getting to a full production, expanding our mining license, which will take several years, and we'll work on that. We are starting that now, and that will expand into new areas. We see Brewery Creek changing because of the exploration that we've announced recently, the results, and there's more coming. And if you don't have a revenue source, it's going to be a challenging time for an exploration company. So moving into production is our best way to add value for our shareholders.
And why should potential investors who are listening consider Golden Predator today? What would you say to them?
Try and identify another project other than Brewery Creek, and I'm sure there is one, that has over a gram per ton, over 1 million ounces indicated and inferred, is licensed for a restart, has a very strong technical team, has a very good relationship with the community, and is able to restart on a timely basis because of the infrastructure left in place. I can't think of another first world jurisdiction project that hits all 5 of those buttons. So I think we're in a very, very small category that offers great value to potential shareholders and our shareholders.
And Janet, how can folks reach out to you and to the company for more information?
goldenpredator.com has all of our contact information. Best way to reach me is JEL@goldenpredator.com, or give a call to the office number on the website, and you'll even if I'm traveling, it'll go right to my cell phone.
Janet, we appreciate you coming on to talk about Golden Predator and introducing our audience to the company. Good luck to you and to the company.
Well, thank you, and I thank everybody for listening. I really appreciate your time for the interview. It's been greatly appreciated, and thank you again.